was made last a few days ago. But then I will ask this, what is your take on everything?
I think the courts have pronounced themselves. You remember there was always concern about the process. The intention was noble to have certain adjustments made to the Constitution. But when you look at the ruling, a lot of it has been anchored on the process and the legitimacy of the process. And the courts have pronounced themselves. So I think since we are a country that believes in the rule of law, we should respect what the courts have determined. And the country now needs to move on, because we have had our energies, time and resources for almost 3 years dedicated to this issue. But now the courts have pronounced themselves. I can only appeal to Kenyans that let us move forward. And if indeed there are areas that can be handled by Parliament, and I think Parliament has been taking up some of these debates, is where they believe there are issues that may not require referendum, perhaps they can consult in Parliament and be able to make some adjustments.
President Uhuru Kenyatta, while addressing editors some few days ago, he said that the courts misadvised on the whole process of BBI and the BBI. What's your take on this? Have Kenyans lost for not allowing BBI maybe to go through?
Courts are independent, and they can always make a ruling which I'll be happy with or I'll be unhappy with. Okay, it depends on which side you are sitting on. So as things stand now, let us count our losses if they are losses, and move on. Yeah.
Move on. You've spoken about election, and considering we have just less than a year to the next general election, as a country, are we prepared from where you sit?
IBC says they're preparing. They're recruiting the new commissioners. So I think what will be important is that they are resourced appropriately and allowed to quickly prepare for the elections. I've seen that they've even put in ads for people who can start participating in the mass voter registration. Remember, the chairman said that since 2017, to date, they have only registered about 150,000 people, new voters. Yet, records show that 5 million new IDs have been issued within the same period. So it would be important that these new voters, potential voters, are registered as voters so that they can make a determination about the leadership of this country in 2022. It's important that that happens. So as far as I'm concerned, the IBC has not come out to say that they are unable to prepare for the elections.
As a presidential candidate, do you have confidence with the current IBC?
We have had doubts, no doubt about it. But if you remember the issues around the Kriegler report on matters of election, Kriegler also warned that you should not try and create an upheaval on an electoral body when you just have a few months to go to an election, because you could introduce a very dangerous environment where people are coming in and they're not well trained or well versed with the management of an election. And that can be dangerous for our country.
According to Wafula Chebukati, the IEBC chairman, they have a deficit of around 14 billion, which they need for the voter registration of the 5,000 and among other things. And if they don't get these monies before then they will be able to cut some of their duties before the next election. Don't you think also budget problems should be resolved as early as today?
That's why I said we should put our energies to ensure that the IBC is well resourced. That is what I said. Well resourced financially, technically, okay, and even in terms of human capacity. So clearly, if the budget process is now, they should get what is very essential. And remember, there's still the element of the budget of 2021. So if they put their priorities right, and the sequencing is done properly, I'm sure they can get some substantive resources now, and maybe whatever comes additional can be made available either through supplementary budget or even within the next financial year.
I understand our elections have been the most expensive, let's say so, in the East Africa, maybe Eastern, maybe Middle Sub-Saharan Africa. But then majority of Kenyans have this question, why us? Why do we have to have this expensive election always? What can be done for us to have a lesser burden as a country?
You know, what is critical, you remember even the Supreme Court made some pronouncement. What is critical is that at the end of the day, I agree with you that the unit cost per voter in Kenya is way higher than some of the other economies, the other nations, which have even a larger number of voters and who are even richer than Kenya. All right? So there's a problem there. So what may be necessary is that a proper professional audit will need to be done on Kenya's electoral processes. And then this can be discussed in some national dialogue with the relevant stakeholders, so that then a strategy and specific measures can be made to start reducing the cost. And you know, institutions like the UN have because this is basically a political field where they have a lot of expertise and so forth. These are areas that can be looked at going forward, and through a national stakeholder forum, critical decisions can be made, and then they can be buttressed by law, and we can reduce the cost of elections in this country.
As a leader, and from where you sit, are we headed in the right direction as a country?
In what context?
Political context.
In the
And considering the back and forth between the president, his deputy, and other leaders.
I think no, politics there'll always be some tension as far as we are concerned, as far as I'm concerned. But I think what we must safeguard is that we should not create a situation where we'll have any electoral violence. Okay, we must manage as a country, even if we are passionate about different candidates or different ideas, we must make sure that it does not degenerate into electoral violence. So we all have a collective responsibility as a people, whether it's the media, whether it is we as politicians, whether it is the voter and other organs, that all have a contribution to this, to make sure that we work in tandem, we work together, we act with restraint and tolerance, so that we do not get any electoral violence.
There is the One Kenya Alliance where you're at with other leaders. Are you still there, or are the talks ongoing? Because we've heard what is happening. We hear there are meetings, they are postponed. You're meeting the president. What is going on?
Meeting the president has nothing to do with the One Kenya, all right? The president can consult anybody, anytime. There's background work that is going on within the framework of the One Kenya Alliance. Building coalitions requires quite a number of things. Concurrence on very key principles of the policies that you will want to pursue. That is critical. We should not just look at it as cobbling up something just for purposes of an election. I think we should start looking at coalitions in a more serious way. The way coalitions are viewed in Germany and other areas, they're seen as bringing people together, or institutions together, or parties together for a long-term objective, and not necessarily for an election season. Yeah. So this is how we are trying to think through in the context of what we are doing at the One Kenya. But we are not out of time. All right, I want to re-emphasize that, because there are guidelines within the IBC, and they issued them, that if there are coalitions, you would have to submit your documents by sometime next year.
But people are wondering why you're taking this long, maybe to come up with a presidential and flag bearer.
I would say they should not worry, because at the end of the day, people are making declarations and intentions. All right, but the time to submit papers for a presidential candidate will come.
What is so different with this OKA and One Kenya Alliance, considering they are the same leaders who are in NASA, maybe one leader who came on board, Amatu?
If you will follow carefully, this is a process that has started. It has not closed. Okay, and reaching out to other leaders is ongoing. Other people who may be interested in joining and working within the umbrella of the One Kenya Alliance, these conversations are going on. Everything does not have to be in the public eye at all times. Okay, I think sometimes there are what we'd call critical milestones in any process. And those are the ones that, in my view, should be the ones that are pronounced when you have reached a critical milestone. So, but if I was there every day to tell you that now I'm going for a One Kenya meeting, it will cease to be news, and I'll bore you. So let us work on the basis of critical milestones.
There are rumors that some leaders from some quarters are pushing One Kenya Alliance maybe to work with Raila Odinga.
I have no idea who that is.
But can you work with Raila Odinga? Are you open to working with him?
I think the question should be, is he ready to work with us?
It's not the other way around.
Yeah, I think, you know, we have already given him support in the past, haven't we?
Yes, we've seen
Yeah,
it.
so I think sometimes we have to reach a stage where he should be the one to respond to, is he ready to work with the others?
In the event he comes on board, are you guys going to support him?
We have declared our intentions. We are going to field a candidate as One Kenya.
Why is it so hard for you guys to support Raila again?
I don't know how to respond to that question. And I would rather, I would rather say we must move on. Let us move on. Let us move on.
There is the bottom-up approach, and pesa mfukoni. I heard your pesa mfukoni, and I would like to understand as a Kenyan. First, let's start from there.
I think what is important is that incomes have seriously declined. You get the point? When we say pesa mfukoni, we are sending a message that the cost of living has become unbearable. Right? So Kenyans are working, but what they earn can barely put food on the table, can barely get them to meet their basic needs. When we take off pesa mfukoni, we are trying to say that we need an economy and we need policies and we'll need a tax regime that can allow you to function. Yeah.
The other divide of politicians, that is the DP and others, will tell you this is the same thing as to what they've been singing in the bottom-up approach.
DP is in government. His policies have put us, or policies that he participated in formulating, have made life difficult for us. How can he walk away from that?
He will tell you that he was just number 2.
Oh, no. This is the presidency. And you know they campaigned and went on one ticket. So he cannot walk away from that. Yeah, they've been sitting in cabinet. Yeah. And inside there, you have a right to be able to alter policy positions. Yeah.
You don't think that we had to wait all this long until he becomes a president, maybe to implement that?
I think this is a perfect case of deception. You have been there. You have been making the policies. For the last 10 years, you have been part and parcel of the policy population. So how do you wake up now and say that, were we living a lie? Were we living a lie?
In your pesa mfukoni, how are we going to achieve this?
We have to set our priorities right. Are we spending money where it is giving us the proper multiplier effect? Those are the questions we should ask. Have we managed our public debt well? If not, can we do something about it so that we don't spend 70% of our tax revenue paying debt? And therefore we have very little to grow the economy, to generate wealth within the economy. Right? So these are the fundamental issues that we'd look at. Get our priorities right. Don't be overambitious in some of the programs we are putting on the table. All right? Then we will be able to grow properly. We want to be able to save Kenyans from excessive tax. For your information, even if you look at the region and you ask yourself, who are some of the biggest investors in the neighboring countries? Do you know there are businesses that have originated in Kenya? And why are they finding comfort to go and do business in the others? Some aspects of the tax regime is chasing them away. So these are factors that we need to address. That is the message I'm trying to put across.
We have heard you over and over again focus on the date which we have and which has been a menace in this country. What are we going to do to ensure we go back to normal?
A lot of work, and it's not going to be instant coffee. All right? We have to address our cost of production. I've given you examples of the cost of energy. 40% of most manufacturing companies, of the budget of manufacturing companies is spent on electricity and energy. We need to lower that, okay, so that energy is more affordable. Then we'll start generating more opportunities for people, more jobs, and so forth. Okay? Once we do that, and the economy is growing, then I think we'll be on the right path.
Are we over borrowing?
I've stated that borrowing can be detrimental if it is expensive debt. All right? We must ask Kenyans, or we must work in a situation where we reduce our commitment to expensive debt and go more for concessional debt. And an example of expensive debt is where your interest rate is like 7% and your repayment is within 15 years or 12 years. Concessionary debt is where you borrow at an interest rate of, say, 1% to 2.5%, and you repay over, say, a 30-year period. So you have to have the right mix of your external debt. And then that way, you can move forward.
How are you going to ensure that at least we go back at least to normal when it comes to matters corruption? And what are we looking forward from your government?
We must have a justice system that functions. And I'll give you an example which I've given before, that we have institutions like the Ethics and Anti-Corruption. In the last budget, 2 budgets, when you look at the figures that have been allocated, they're given about 3 billion. The Director of Public Prosecution, about 3 billion. The Auditor General, about 3 billion. All right? The Asset Recovery and Money Laundering, about 1 billion. The DCI, maybe about 5 to 6 billion. Now, all these are institutions that must work together to fight corruption. The judiciary was given 18 billion. In comparison to Parliament, Parliament gets 40 billion. And these institutions that are fighting corruption. So we must make sure that these institutions are well equipped and well resourced. And then the judiciary must also have its capacity. For instance, we can open up and make sure that in all the counties, there are proper court functions in all the counties, so that some of these issues can be dealt with quickly and in those out in the region, so that we don't have a situation where cases are pending for years and years and years. Yeah.
Have we moved on as a country from tribal politics?
Fortunately, not yet. We still see ethnicity at play. It is not something that we will get out of for quite some time. We will see these issues come up, but slowly, as maybe urbanization takes more effect, we will then start seeing less of the ethnic politics going forward.
I understand, and I had just a few days ago the president calling upon his deputy to resign if at all he feels that they are not doing the things or the policies don't favor him in the government. What do you think of this?
I think it's a fact. It's a question of integrity. In most other countries, going forward, and this is what you know. If you feel that you are aggrieved and you are part of a government, then you cannot say you want to hang there, and yet you're completely working at cross purposes. So it's really a question of integrity. But what we are seeing is that integrity seems to have been locked up in some cupboard in Kenya's politics.
I have heard the DP over and over again say, nimetengwa katika hii serikali, nimetengwa katika hii serikali. What do you think of that?
Why is he lamenting? It's up to him. They moved in on the same ticket. So if he feels it's not tenable, he knows what to do.
We had him the other day, that is the deputy president, say that he called the Equity Bank to lend his friend, a Turkish businessman, Aydin Harun, some 15 billion shillings, which doesn't look like small money in this country and which can do a lot. What do you think of this?
Of course, the figures that were being talked about are mind-boggling.
Yes.
But all I can tell you is this. I think Kenyans should also look at the question of, is there an issue of abuse of office? All right? Because if you're a public figure, were you acting in your private capacity, or were you bringing to bear the influence of your office? These are the questions that must be answered. And the matter is before a committee of parliament. Because you know very well that if you're in public office, you're not supposed to engage in business. So those are the questions that must be answered.
I have heard you over and over again repeat that you're going to be in the ballot. What is the one thing we're going to look forward to in your government?
I can tell you my focus will be about an economy that will work for all Kenyans.